Handsome 66-year-old.
There's that first question.
He knows it.
You know what the first question is? We're on.
We're ready. Hey, here we are, folks, on our Tuesday, first day of June. Well, not first day of June, our first show of June.
June 3rd.
Steve hasn't changed the calendar behind him, so I'm lost. I think it's June 3rd. Am I correct?
You are correct.
Yeah,
what
June
time
3rd,
is it?
Tuesday. Well, it's 9 o'clock for people that are listening to us. The polls have just closed. I believe they'll be coming out with their preliminary counts, basically the absentees. But we're here on Tuesday morning, the morning of June 3rd, Election Day, here at KYOS Studio C, the Palatial Studio C. We have a few guests, some people sitting in from other shows. Can't get rid of this guy. But we love having him in here.
Like a tick.
Yeah, the KYOS
Like a
radio
what?
family is growing.
I had the wrong consonant.
Steve Colvard on the controls.
Ginger snaps.
Best Robert, let's not.
Roger.
Think
I'm
you're
not as rich as
Wood.
Roger.
Yeah, I know. You wish you had a canning plant now.
Yeah, really.
Anyway, Steve Colvard on the controls. Robert the Velvet Sledgehammer Tomasetti in studio.
What?
I was going to call him Spaghetti Tomasetti, but
You're being
I
weird.
still think the Velvet Sledgehammer is the best one. Machete just
Yeah.
doesn't fit.
He gets machete-ish every once in a while, though.
He gets
when he
machete-ish.
starts hacking away.
I like when he gets sledgy, and I have a feeling today he will be sledgy. And I'm Casey Steed. We're here, and again,
What's our
Studio
tip
C.
line, Casey?
Our tip line is area code 209-406-8728. Just leave a message. It'll come through eventually. You know, we have a guest that I thought was going to come in last Thursday.
But he was...
And I was really, really looking forward to it. And I can't say I'm any less excited, even though today is Election Day. I wanted to have this gentleman in. You know, we had all the sheriff's candidates, except for Story. I don't consider him a candidate. But we had all the candidates in, and we were missing Mr. Lunney. And I've heard him introduced as Lunney. And I always get a chuckle out of that. I know Pat's a good sport. And he has to correct people every once in a while, but it is Lunney, Pat Lunney. He was our former police chief. If people think that name is familiar, well, it is familiar. About, 20 years ago, Pat, you were a chief?
Yeah, I left in
Long
99.
time ago.
99, so 99 to 09. My math is not good.
About 15 years, yeah.
Right.
So, and then he went to the State Department of Justice, correct?
Right.
Went to the State Department
Do
of
you
Justice.
remember who the chief was after, Pat?
I believe it was Tony Dosetti.
I'm just asking. It's after the election by the time anybody hears
It was
this.
forgettable, but I remembered.
Whoa.
Anyway, you led me into that one. Anyway,
Just wondering if you remembered.
Pat Lunney is running for chief, or excuse me, not running for chief of police. He's running for the Merced County Sheriff, vacated by Mark Payson. I've always started every interview with this statement, and I want to know if you agree with it. If Mark Payson hadn't left for the Department of Emergency Preparedness or whatever he's doing, I know if the big one hits, we're in good hands. But if he hadn't left, do you think anybody would have challenged him this election?
I don't. No, I don't think anybody would have.
Same answer I've got from every candidate. So what
You were running.
No. What that tells me is that once he didn't run, once he decided not to run, and there was so much interest in the race, and I won't say criticism to the department, but maybe new directions it should be taking, and why it's been ineffective.
Call it
lately.
criticism.
It is criticism.
It is.
And we've seen, record number of homicides. We've seen directions that should be maybe taken in enforcement that haven't. A lot of frustration in a lot of people's parts. So I think there was a need for a new direction. And isn't that why you ran?
Well, yes. I think that there were situations that were occurring on the sheriff's office that were not being addressed. The election process was going to be daunting running against an incumbent, a well-financed incumbent,
Right.
one that had built a fairly large machine over the years. And I think that nobody really had considered that as a real possibility.
And in some ways, isn't that frustrating? Because you see the need for change. People get up on the bully pulpit in front of the supervisors or in the press and talk about change, but you can't be effective unless you have a leader. And isn't that what you want to be? I mean, why are you running for sheriff?
I'm running for sheriff.
Because he'd look good in the uniform.
I think Pat would look good in it.
Well, thank you, Rob.
He's got good-looking hair. I swear to God. You remember when we did that with the Schweigert's guy?
Yeah. Yeah, I know.
Look at that.
Stop flirting, Robert.
I'm not.
It's hard to believe, Pat. 66.
66.
I got to be honest. I always said, oh, he's kind of old. I'm looking at him. He looks younger than we do.
Yeah, well, I heard you had a pickup basketball game and you kicked Larry Morris's ass and your other.
Larry smokes.
Larry was.
Larry's got bad habits.
Larry was not on his game that.
Okay. Well, that's being.
That sounds like a political excuse, doesn't it, Robert?
Yeah. You faced a lot of criticism, and you're probably going to face some today. Why are you running for sheriff? Why do you want to be sheriff of Merced County? Like I say, if Mark was still in the saddle, you probably wouldn't have ran. But you see a need now.
Right.
And you threw your hat in the ring.
Actually, over the period of this race, it's become more clear to me that there are some issues that need to be addressed. When you take a close look at really what's going on, not only in the sheriff's office, but in the county, across the county, fiscally, with respect to those kinds of issues, I think that there's some big needs that have to be addressed.
List a couple.
I think, just look at the facilities.
Sandy Mush.
The Sandy Mush facility.
The bed and breakfast.
It was an institution that was never built to be used the way they're trying to use it.
We always hear that long term.
Wait, can you do me a favor, Pat? I talk in pieces, and I'm sorry, but okay, I hear that a lot. That it was built for, it was never built for. Whether a guy's staying there a month, a year, or 17 years, some people have asked me, what's the difference? If we're watching the guys and people are paying attention to what they're doing, okay, scraping holes in a wall or something like that would be caught. I mean, what exactly is the difference between long-term and short-term in terms of safety or security? Or
AB 109.
Here's what you have to look at is with a stroke of a pen, the governor changed the criminal justice system in the state of California more than probably in the last 50 years. What you had prior to that was anybody sentenced to a year or less was going to do county time.
Right.
And that kind of a sentence always revolved around rehabilitation, that they hadn't done anything so bad that they have to be punished long term. And so they built the facilities to reflect that.
Right.
Not hard lockdown facilities,
Sure.
not isolation facilities, not those kinds of things. And when that statute became law and people started pouring out of the state institutions back to the local level, we weren't prepared to handle them.
It's a different kind of customer you're dealing with.
And exactly. Not only different, but more sophisticated,
right,
and more worldly in terms of criminal.
A little more hardened.
Yes, and now you're having people sentenced out there 10, 12, 15 years.
Right.
And the facility was never built to hold that. That is a problem.
But we struck out on the bond last year. Is that something we can apply for annually, or?
As long as there's money in the budget, the governor puts some more money in the budget for facilities construction around the state, but the LAO, the Legislative Analyst Office, is recommending against it. Now that the budget's in conference right now in the legislature, and we'll see what comes out of it.
So what do you do? Joe Arpaio it, put out tents? I mean, we've heard that from one of the other candidates. If it's good enough for our soldiers, it's good enough for the prisoners. Or is that not feasible?
Well, it's not feasible. There's a number of statutes and regulations that you have to fall within, and what you don't want to do is get on the wrong side of that. So you're fighting that issue rather than trying to solve the problem.
Right.
And so,
I'll catch you with
that's one thing that's a problem in this county. Another thing that's a major problem, I think, in this county, which stems from the financial situation, is right now. There's a whole number of employee associations and negotiations. They're actually asking for give-backs from the employees.
You're talking about the unions?
Unions, yeah. Associations.
Organized labor.
Ooh, I like how you put it.
You're very politically correct. We're a little more pedestrian on this show.
We're crass.
So when you talk about employment bargaining organizations,
right,
we're talking about AFSME,
right,
SBIU, these type of things. The DSA, Deputy Sheriff Association.
DSA, yeah. And so, but the point I'm trying to make is that when those kinds of things happen, and when you have stagnation over a several-year period of time,
right,
you are going to have recruitment and retention problems.
Which we have now.
And that is another problem that needs to be addressed.
I heard one of the statistics in the department, 90% of the employees, 5 years or less tenure. Isn't that a horrible statistic, a horrible statement about the department?
Well, it could be.
Where's the seniority? Why hasn't the seniority stayed around? Who's leading the ship over there? 5 years or less?
Well, there's a lot of people retired. A lot of people have retired out. I suppose if you're running a shift with, everybody on probation, that is a major problem.
Right.
But if you're running, 5, 6, 7 year people, that's enough experience to do a good job.
Okay.
I think.
Yeah, but this creates a problem way down the road.
Question: Is the stagnation in our county, is that a unique situation here? I mean, aren't other counties experiencing the same things we are, and how are they retaining their employees? And if you want to give back some of the benefits or the things you've taken from these employees, where do you anticipate finding the money to do that?
Well, the problem is this is an evolving situation. 5 years ago, nobody was hiring. Everybody was reducing their forces, and so nobody was moving. Now we're going you look around the state and, down the coastline and up in some of the urban areas, they're in recovery.
Right.
And so
economic
now,
recovery?
Yeah. And so now
economic.
they're beginning to hire people.
Right.
And that's where we're losing people.
Right.
They told me just the other day that 2 deputies went to Tracy PD because the pay's better.
So would it be fair to say before we can start offering these public employee unions compensation and benefit increases that we need to get economic growth here in our county? I mean, do they go hand in hand? Where are you going to find the money to give this? Or is it the misallocations of the money that we currently have?
Well, I think you have to prioritize, what it is that is important to the county. And if there's not enough money to be able to retain qualified, good people, then you have to reprioritize and figure out how to do a good job in some things rather than a mediocre job in a broad range of things.
Right.
So it's reprioritizing our economic priorities at the county level. So redistributing the money we currently have.
Yes.
Because economically, we're not looking real good right now, right? So
Well, we're looking at the deficit
well,
budget of the county of $9 million. It's no secret. You got $46 million to work with. How are you going to make it go? And you have to decide, look, I don't have anything more coming from the state. I can't build a new facility.
That's where the repriority comes in, right?
Yeah, and I've got these bargaining units, the unions,
right,
barking up my ass, telling me, look, I've taken a cut the last 7 years. I need more money. We look to be in a better picture, but as you know, we're not.
Right.
And how do you convey
and
that to them?
we won't be for a couple, 3 years.
We
probably.
won't. So you're saying we need to take a tough stance on our bargaining and maybe get some long-lasting employee concessions or some sort of...
I think we can allow it to get to the point where we're not being able to hire or retain people.
Right. In other words,
that's what I'm saying.
Can't worry about just what we've got in the bin. We need to look long-term.
Right. Yeah.
And this brings a bigger issue, which we're probably going to go into after the break, is
After the break.
After the break. Is your experience administratively? Because the things you've talked about are forward-looking, vision type of things. Administrative type of things.
Let me
how
ask
you get
you a
the
question.
Money, how you make things work.
Okay, we've had criticisms about we need this and we need that.
Right.
And I've heard it all been put on Mark's shoulders. And this is just commentary. It's not a question for Pat. And my question is where were the people who criticized Mark and his vision and lack of vision? How come they didn't rally around and say, well, a lot of it is economic, and there's nothing you could do. Your hands are tied.
Well, that's what it always comes down to.
Even Pat's hands are tied to a degree.
Of course.
So, it didn't make a difference who it is. I mean, it could be Jim Sawyer.
You got $46 million.
Only because I see his pen here.
You got $46 million.
Yeah.
What are you going to do with it? He's got a checking account. He can't pull,
And I think that's where the prioritization, if that's even a word, that's where that comes in, right?
In terms of hiring and keeping people, I mean, there's some things we can do. I think if you look at the deployment structure.
Bake sale.
Start making furniture out there.
Hey, there you go. Sorry, Pat, go ahead.
At State, we had to buy all our furniture from prison industries.
Unfinished furniture.
Yeah.
My idea.
Yeah.
Don't take it.
No, I think there's things that we have to start looking at in terms of redeploying what we have. If you look at the beach structure around this county, it's been the same way for 50 or 60 years.
Right.
That probably doesn't make sense in today's world.
And when you talk about beats like Dos Palos, Los Banos.
The way the structure's broken up where they patrol in their areas.
So you want to maybe geographically break that up?
Well, I think we have to do some regionalization kinds of things.
We can be more efficient.
Yeah. It doesn't, if you have one deputy that's patrolling the periphery of Atwater.
Right.
He gets a call north of Atwater
to Winton,
and then gets a call south of Atwater to McSwain. He's driving 45 minutes to get to the call.
Right.
That doesn't make a lot of sense. We got to figure out how to do it better.
Maybe redeploy the troops differently?
You got to redeploy. We might have to form some partnerships with some of the local agencies.
Right.
Hilmar probably needs some kind of substation out there. LeGrand needs a substation.
Right.
Then the ones that we don't have substations in, we've got to partner with the agencies that are right in that area and figure out how we can help them and they can help us.
And we have the funds currently in the system. They just need to be more strategically deployed, in your opinion?
Well,
we're not counting on more revenue anytime soon, are we?
I don't think so. I think there's possibilities to write grants that will get some money from the state and maybe the federal government. But long term, I don't think you can depend on that. I think you have to figure out how to be better, be able to do the job with what you have, and I mean, you gotta factor in technology, you gotta factor in intelligence kind of things.
Yeah, we'll talk about that after the break. We're running out of time for this segment as the county has run out of money. We'll be right back, folks. Stand by. Folks, welcome back to the second segment of Citizen Watch. Tuesday evening, June 3rd. We're into June. It's going to be a hot one this week.
Did you get out and vote?
Yeah.
Because if you didn't, turn the radio off right now. We don't like you anymore.
You know what, folks? We always encourage people. We hope to get over a 25% turnout. Hopefully that happened. Maybe 30 or 40%. But if you didn't vote this time, please get out and vote next time. You know, primary election, general election in November is going to be a real important one. In studio, we have, of course, Steve Colvard running the controls.
Ginger Snaps.
Robert the Velvet Sledgehammer Tomasetti. We're not using that name anymore, Robert. No more Ginger
He said
Snaps.
it's okay.
I know.
He got hit a racquetball last night. At least he's not mad.
3 times.
Yeah.
3 times he nailed me.
Really?
Yeah.
Back of the head.
I think it's intentional. I think
it is too.
I'm not that good.
And I'm Casey Steed, and we're here at Studio C, the palatial Studio C at the KYOS radio headquarters from the big stick out there at the lake, transmitting, 1 billion watts out there? Aren't we frying people within a 20-mile radius?
Right.
Kids at Golden Valley
we got Mr. Lunney in office. So I mean, in studio. So
Robert.
stop what you're
Not in office.
Telling everybody about the lava lamp.
I took a minute. Okay.
No, you always take more than that.
You got to lead the people in. You know, you don't know what you really had until you lose it, folks. So hang on.
like your cell phone.
Hang on to what you have. You know, you have a way of timely putting things in. We have Pat Lunney in studio, as Robert said. He's running for Merced County Sheriffs, one of the top law enforcement position. We always argue with Larry. Who's the top law enforcement officer in Merced County? The sheriff or the district attorney? And it was always funny between Payson and Larry. They would kind of tease each other back and forth. But I think we've agreed that it is the sheriff. So, and you know, Pat right now works over
Pat's
the
taking the fifth on that. I can tell by his reaction.
Yeah, because Pat's
he's
boss,
being politically correct.
Because Pat's boss thinks he's in charge. Pat's about to show him. Anyway, Pat works over at the district attorney's office as the lead investigator,
chief investigator,
the district attorney's
he's
office.
A CI.
And, you know, one of the concerns that's been brought up on this show is that
it was in the paper.
It was in the papers. There's a cozy relationship, obviously, between yourself and the district attorney. He's obviously advocating for you.
He's his biggest cheerleader.
He's done a couple of ads for you, vote for Pat Lunney.
Yes.
And people maybe have questioned, what's the relationship going to be if you assume the top post at the sheriff's department?
Yeah.
I think we've seen, and I'll say this frankly, we've seen some friction between the DA and the sheriff in the last few months before he left. And I think there was some differences of opinion on enforcement profile. And to be honest with you, I don't think it's a bad idea for the DA and the sheriff to be getting along. Okay,
yeah,
now I'm not talking about collusion, but I'm talking about getting along and enforcing the law.
No,
and
that's
there was
fine.
some serious differences between the sheriff and the DA
but the problem
about allocation of resources.
No, it goes
further. Do you
further.
agree with that?
Wait a minute, it goes further than that. The real question isn't whether or not they have a good relationship. We want them to have a good relationship. And Pat and Larry
Then what are you concerned about?
The people are concerned about Tom Cavallaro, what he did and what he's been doing, and what the sheriff has been authorized to do.
Well, let's talk about that. This thing with the Board of Supervisors, Hub.
You get a rambunctious guy
Hub
gets
got
up there.
a little
Wasn't Hub.
Little anxious. Yeah, it was Hub. He got a little anxious over people that were coming up and talking, maybe some of the other supervisors. They made a request to the sheriff to maybe do some background checks, investigate some of the public speakers. How do you feel about that incident?
I think it was a mistake.
Would you have done it?
No.
There's my answer. That's good enough for me. Because that's what people are concerned about.
Okay, but how does that relate to Larry?
Because you got a sheriff that's sitting there doing these checks. Oh, wow. Look, hey, guess what we found? Okay, Larry, let's take him, people look at it that way.
We're a little more professional than that in this county, aren't we?
Yes,
I think Pat and Larry are professional, but this is what people have asked.
Well,
I think that's a fair question. I think it's a fair question. I've had people ask me if Larry is going to run the sheriff's office if I'm elected. I think that's a fair question.
And what do you tell them?
I tell them that the best interest of the county can be served if law enforcement and the prosecution work closely together.
Hello.
We'll get better conviction rates. We'll have better cases. It'll be better in the long run.
Are you in Merced?
I also say, I've been endorsed by every police chief in the county of Merced.
Former and current.
Norm is not going to probably run the sheriff's office either.
Right.
But our working relationship is going to be better, and it's going to benefit the citizens of Merced as well as the citizens of Merced County.
And let's talk about some of...
So, Larry and I have a professional relationship. We have a friendship also. But, that's distinctly different than our interactions if I'm elected sheriff.
Well, I think it's somewhat of a juvenile look at that relationship. I think, again, you have a professionalism that shouldn't even be coming into play. But again, people look at that.
Sure.
The guy works for him. What kind of influence is he going to have over him? And like I said, I think you need to have a good working relationship. I know one of Larry's criticisms is, hey, I can't prosecute anybody unless you bring me somebody to prosecute.
Right.
And this is where we talk about investigations and maybe utilizing the assets you have, more investigators or more troops or more intelligence. We've heard, let's talk about gangs. I've talked to Larry. He's been on this show. He feels that Payson didn't commit enough emphasis toward gangs and the marijuana thing with the cartels and the gangs and what drives which and, is a chicken or the egg and geez, we went round and around in this circle. What do you think needs to be done on that issue? Highest number of gang murders we had in the county last year, unsolved. You're going to be the one that needs to bring some suspects. We had the Winton massacre, 3 kids over there at a party.
Right.
Hilmar, it goes on and on.
Dedrick, Kelsey's, Hilmar, and Winton.
Shot in the head. The next week, shot in the head. Same residence. It's the wild, wild west.
Right.
Larry's expressed frustration as he's had to spend his money to do what he felt the sheriff should do. What's the answer, Pat?
Well, I think gangs are a quality of life issue. They're really affecting. People are afraid.
Damn right.
It affects your everyday movements around the county. You're wondering.
Hey, I'm like Mark Cuban.
What's
coming down the street, baby? I'm on the other side.
Hey, don't be going there.
But
he had to apologize.
I'll apologize too, but I don't. I'm.
Go ahead, Pat. I'm sorry.
The way you go about it, I think, is that 1994, when I was at the city of Merced, we saw the gang problem developing. We started to see the kinds of issues that people were afraid of and were affecting their neighborhood. So we put together a grant and wrote a funding mechanism, so we started our gang violence suppression unit. That unit would go out and where the kids were riding around in cars that were obviously gangster kinds of things. They were hanging out with tattoos. They were wearing colors, all those kinds of things. They would do interventions at that level. They would try to break that up. That, is 20 years ago. And I don't think probably that's going to work very well now, especially across the wide breadth of the county. What will work, though, is if we gather enough intelligence, we spend enough time gathering intelligence, so the few people that we do dedicate to gangs, that when they go out, they're going out with a purpose.
And right now, isn't it true the Sheriff's Department dedicates very few people to gangs?
Yeah. And so, nothing's really happening right
I've heard
now.
one detective in the county for everybody, for all the departments.
Let me ask you guys a question.
Well, I think they have a couple assigned to the county gang unit now.
I'm not an officer.
But MPD, Norm Andrade, who supports you, commits more resources to gangs than the entire Sheriff's Department.
Yeah, right.
Is that wrong?
Yes.
That needs to change.
Well, it needs to change, but
And these are some of the things we're talking about.
Exactly, but just as a caveat, let me say that just throwing numbers at it is not the answer.
Right.
Well, let me ask you
We've got
guys
to
a
throw
question.
numbers at, but we got to do it on an intelligence-based policing model.
And that's where I was
where
going.
we go after people because we know who they are, we know what they're doing, we know where they're going to be, and that's the way you disrupt it now. And so the gang unit, whatever it looks like, once we constitute it, it may not have 20 deputies on it. It may only have, 6 or 8, but those deputies will have the information that they'll be able to be effective.
Well, I think that's been one of the other criticisms. The STAR team's focused. Maybe he's been too focused or not focused in the right areas. So what you're talking about is maybe not the number of bodies, but the focus.
Yeah.
I'm not a police officer,
Go
but I have
ahead.
a question for you guys.
Yes.
All right, now I'm a sheriff out in LeGrand, or I'm a sheriff out in Planada.
Planet X.
Okay. When I was a kid, it was Officer Friendly and Mr. Stranger Danger, and I always brag about Bob Luna, because Bob Luna knew all his people downtown.
Right,
if there was an issue. So I'm a sheriff, or I'm a police officer, and I'm patrolling an area. How come I don't know anybody? How come I never get out of my car and talk to people?
Resources.
Well, again,
Why do I just keep driving around on my cell phone talking to whoever the hell?
You have a huge area,
It's called community policing, right?
community oriented.
And we
Well,
just
I'm
don't
asking
have
you
the
guys. I mean,
manpower.
Casey, well, I mean, Casey, you're a reserve, and Pat.
Different beat. You're in La Jolla. It's small. It's clustered. You can get out and walk around down on the beat.
How big is LeGrand?
LeGrand, but it's spread out. You've got the other part of the county. It gets down to resources, like
Yeah,
Pat
but wait
said.
a minute. I talked to a guy who, Pat knows, just asking. I talked to a guy who says, like tagging. He says, if you paid attention to the kids at school, you see the same tagging on their books as you see on the walls. Right. And if you're paying attention, you could draw the line in the
Well,
parallels.
Pat was one of the first people to get school resource officers into the school to make that connection early and to have that. And he got a lot of heat for it.
I did.
Because people were like, oh, we don't want cops in our school. We're militarizing our school. Now people are begging for it.
Well, I know, because people say,
It's like,
we
where
don't
are
want
the
to build them
cops?
like a prison.
When they got pulled out last year.
What I'm asking is I'm on a beat. Other than driving around in my car in air conditioning while everybody else is sweating their nuts off, and I'm on my cell phone talking to my girlfriend, wife, or whatever.
That's right.
How come I'm not paying attention to, I see this. I've seen him there at that corner.
You have good cops and bad cops. It gets down to personalities. You have some cops that are beat orientated. You have some that are 40 a week, hide and seek.
I'm asking you.
Just like you
Excuse
said.
me, are
they
you
drive
running for
around, they
sheriff?
wanna go fight.
Yo, you running for sheriff?
We can ask Pat
Shut
that.
the hell up.
You're
I'm asking.
me.
I'm looking at you because you're big. I'm looking, Pat. I think if I look at Pat, I'm going to want my hair.
All right, well, we can let Pat out.
Why is that?
I think there's a couple of three things in play. I think Casey's exactly right. I think there are some cops, deputies, highway patrolmen who work 40 hours a week, and they don't want to turn over any rocks, those kind of things. Then there's others that do want to get involved, and they're willing to get out of their cars. They're willing to be deployed. The third thing that comes in, though, is do they have time to do that?
Right.
If they're running, if they're beat covers 200 square miles, which
Right.
some of them do.
That's right.
That's a lot of area to be
Huge.
to be getting out talking to everybody all the time.
this may bring us
that's why we have. I think that's why we have to take a look at our deployment.
No, and I agree with you, Pat. But see, my concern is that the police department's become the babysitter of a neighborhood. Your dog's on my lawn, so I call the police, and
Right.
the police are doing all this bullshit
Right.
instead of doing what they really need to do. I go to Winton because I have friends of mine in Winton, the Deucens. Okay, you go to Winton, I don't see a police officer or a sheriff in Winton ever.
Well, the witness is sheriff, and the thing is, it gets to resources. Service calls, number of calls, what they have to do, free time. I guarantee you, these lineups are probably understaffed half the time.
Oh, of course.
Again,
but
you got 5 years or less, so you got some kid out there. He's not quite sure what the hell he's supposed to do. I agree. 5 years is maybe the borderline, but this brings up another issue I want to get into. And let's talk about Pat in this election. Is field versus administration. Okay.
Oops.
We've always heard this among the candidates, and you made a very good comment at the Tea Party debate with the sheriff's candidates. Vern Warnke got up and said, if I go out to a scene and it's a homicide scene and the lead detective has it under control, I'm going to let him do his job. And if he needs me to direct traffic, I'm going to direct traffic and lay out a flare pattern. And you got up right after that and said, if you want somebody to go to a homicide scene and lay out a flare pattern, vote for Vern Warnke. Don't vote for me. If you want somebody to
ballsy.
administer the department, vote for me. And I think this is what highlights the difference between Pat Lunney and the other three, and I'll say there's three candidates running against you. Don't you agree?
Yes, I do agree with that.
And haven't you heard that?
I have heard it numerous times.
Okay, and what would you say to people that say we need a strong field sheriff, and hey, we can hire anybody administrative as an undersheriff?
I think you need a sheriff that understands the field. Somebody's that been in the field. Listen, I started out as a patrolman. I've been a sergeant. I know what they do. I've been a lieutenant. I know what they do.
Right.
So I've worked my way up. I think you need a sheriff that understands that. And to the degree a sheriff has to get out into the community with the deputies to understand what's going on, I agree with that. I don't think that you want a sheriff doing deputy work because there is too much that has to be done in terms of administration of this department if we're going to move forward.
So we're not going to see Pat Lunney taking a unit out on Saturday and checking on the troops, but we will see Pat Lunney up at Sacramento or doing what it needs to do administratively for the future of this department. Is that what you're saying?
Not exactly.
We will see
no.
you on Saturday night out on the beat.
I doubt that I'll be driving a car out in the beat, but I very may well be riding with somebody out in the beat.
Right.
Because, like I say, I think you have to understand and have a good handle on what's going on. But by the same token, you're going to see me doing the kinds of things that I think we need to do to move this department forward. And that is fiscally, that's legislatively, the kinds of things to set our vision to move us forward.
And let's talk about the importance of an undersheriff. Again, I've asked every candidate, who's your choice for undersheriff? They've all declined to tell me, and I understand why. And it could be a he or a she. But isn't that a very important position? Vern Warnke, I'll just take an example from him. He's the one that says, look, I'll hire the administrator that I need as undersheriff. I'm going to be the guy that identifies with the troops. But how important is the undersheriff, and what would the undersheriff in your administration, the role would be? Oh, you know what? Before you answer that question, Robert just pointed to the clock. We're getting to the end of our second segment. I'll tell you, this goes fast. I really appreciate you coming in, Pat. Hang on. We'll answer that question as soon as we get back.
Who's Max?
Okay, who's Max? Folks, welcome back to our third and final segment of Citizen Watch. I'll go through I'll skip the pleasantries. We all know who's here.
Well, this is important.
It is. It is important. And unfortunately, I wish I had this guest on last Thursday, but he was very busy. But I appreciate him coming in now.
And congratulations to your nephew for being picked it. How do you do that? Pick it?
I don't know. He was somewhere.
He had to go to Santa Monica because
Graduation.
Yeah. It was a promotion. He was promoted to lieutenant on San Mateo County Sheriff's Office. San Mateo. And it was
he's the undersheriff. There you go.
Very nicely done presentation.
Great.
Well,
good for you.
Well, congratulations, and again, we appreciate you coming in. I really can't explain enough. We were talking before the break about the difference between the field and the administration, and how Vern Warnke has said that he's going to be with the field. He'll hire an administrator. We talked about how important that is. What the undersheriff would do in your administration. I think that's where we were at.
Well, without being there and seeing the people and understanding, what their capabilities are, it's hard to say anything. But let me say this. At this juncture, it might make more sense for us to have 3 captains rather than an undersheriff.
Let's change the structure.
It might make more sense.
I
it
like
might
that.
make more sense.
Because typically the undersheriff wielded a lot of power.
All the administrations I've been in, when there's one person below the head guy, and
duplication of.
They become the de facto head.
They get skipped over. Things stop
I like
there
that.
sometimes.
I like that.
So that would be one thing I'd look at. But
what do you think about that, Robert?
I'm still hung up on the trust issue.
Trust?
Well, the thing with me is look.
Trust what? Between the deputies and the public?
Can you let me see? That's what you do. Blah, blah, blah. Pat is a great administrator.
Yeah.
Okay, Merced was a really good town when Pat ran it.
Right.
Then Pat left.
Right.
We had a void.
Right.
We had people that got in there, and then things got all discombobulated.
Okay.
Okay. I see that Frank Swigert, I see that Vern we want to be a people's kind of chief because sheriff, because our last sheriff was, I had to be in the limelight.
Right.
And so what they're trying to do, I think, is build trust. Okay. And I agree with Pat. You're the sheriff. Do what's best for Merced County, not what's best for you. And I hear that from Pat. The situation I'm just saying is I think Swigert and Warren are looking at it like, come on, troops, you follow me over the hill, okay, instead of taking a step back and pointing, leadership. You see what I'm saying?
Kind of.
What do you mean, kind of?
Okay,
Mark didn't play well with others, okay?
I know.
So I think that these guys are taking the tact that I'm going to play well with you, therefore you can trust me and follow me over the hill.
Well, I think there was some dissension within the department over Mark's
dissension.
But let's talk about something you brought up, and we've talked about it. You're 66 years old.
Oh,
you get sworn in. You're 66, 67. I don't know what the timeline is. Bottom line,
it looks good for 66.
Like I said, he kicked Larry's ass the other day at a pickup game.
Yeah, but Larry smokes.
But the bottom line is, you're getting to that point in life where most people would think about retirement.
Yeah, post-retirement.
And this department has been led long-term by a person, 20-some years in the saddle? I think Mark was in there.
No, he was sheriff just under 12.
12 years.
Under
12
12.
years in the saddle.
Yeah.
How many years in the saddle do you plan on staying?
12.
Do you think you need to be in there? Are you
P88.
We've heard, you might be just a one-term sheriff. You're trying to pad your retirement.
Right.
You've got three retirement checks in the mailbox. How many more do you need? What is this all about? If you're such a great asset to the Merced County District Attorney's Office,
stay there. Why would the thing that
how do you answer those
people
criticisms?
have asked this, and this is exactly how
he knows. How would you answer those criticisms?
Well, he knows
a
because
couple of
Casey.
things. Number one, I only have one retirement.
It's huge.
City of Merced?
City of Merced and the state were the same retirement system.
Okay, the state system.
So it's one
So
retirement.
let's get rid of some of those fallacies.
Okay, so
it's not three checks in the mail.
Secondly, when the Attorney General termed out in Sacramento, I termed out too because I was one of 8 exempt employees at 5,500 Department of Justice, 5,500 people Department of Justice. So I spent 16 months being retired. So I know, and I played golf every day. I played softball. I skied. I did all those things.
Drank a little wine.
And drank a little wine.
Right.
And, at the end of that time, I came to understand that I didn't want to be retired. And so retirement is not an issue to me right now because I want to be working, and that's why I came back and got a job with the DA's office. This one-term thing, one thing I think is kind of ironical because almost everybody in the state of California votes for term limits.
Of course.
They want term limits. And
Yeah. But you understand,
but not in this job.
It goes to a motive.
Yes, of course.
And I'll be real honest with you while we're sitting here talking. I've heard the plan is Pat Lunney's in there for 4, and then one of the younger people come up and he takes over.
Say the name.
Kevin Blake. I'll say it.
Mm-hmm. He comes over, takes over as sheriff, and that's the pecking order.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me just say about the 4-year thing. If I honestly thought that I could get done what I think needs to be done at the sheriff's office in 4 years, I would honestly tell you that I might be a one-term sheriff. My experience 27 years of administrative experience at high levels of law enforcement tell me that 4 years won't be enough.
Right.
So
I agree with you.
I am not intending on being a one-term sheriff.
Good.
Secondly, Kevin has worked on my campaign. He's been a big help, and I appreciate that.
Right.
But I can honestly tell you the only time that subject has ever come up is when I've heard people talking about it on the street, and I've asked him about it.
Right.
There is no succession plan.
Okay.
You got to get voted in.
Well, this is why we talk about these things on
sure.
Citizen Watch.
But I
And
think
that's why I'm glad Pat came in.
But here's the issue that most people hit on.
What?
Is the retirement.
But Pat just explained it. He gets one check.
No, he doesn't, because the county of Merced is separate.
So he hasn't retired from the county yet.
He will.
I understand that, but
How many years you have?
Is that a
Excuse
problem
me?
with you?
To some people, it is.
Is that a problem with you?
With me, kind of, sort of.
Explain what you mean.
Why is
Explain
it
what you
wrong?
mean.
Sunstar, I agreed with the Sunstar wholeheartedly. There was an article about Pat Lunney's the guy and all the good things, and I went, yeah. I agree. Then he got to a square that said, this is a very, what did they say? It was a big issue with them. And they said, he's 66 years old. He's already in line to retire. All you need is 10 years as a sheriff, and you max out with big bucks.
I understand, but the problem is,
wait a minute.
Do you blame the system or do you blame the guy?
That's
you can't
not
blame
the
Pat.
point. The point. Come on, Casey. Okay, that's what people ask. I look at it. I think what's breaking Merced and what's breaking the city and what's breaking the state is all these retirements that were. I mean, Greg Wellman to me is the guy that needs to be.
Okay, but we're not voting for Greg Wellman. Pat,
my
you want
point
to
is-
address that? I mean, am I right about the system or the person?
Exactly. I mean, what you have to realize is no matter who gets elected sheriff, it's going to cost the county of Merced exactly the same amount of money.
Right.
Now, if you want to say, Pat, you have a retirement from over 30 years of working, we don't think that's fair. That retirement, the public safety retirement, is something that you shouldn't be able to have and get another job, use your experience. That's a whole nother question.
Yeah,
And
but
I
they
think-
get in some subjective bullshit.
Wait a minute.
Another issue.
You know what? Wait.
This is class envy.
No, this isn't class envy because you do it. You argue with this point. The point I have is when you
About
overlap.
the system.
I think the system should be one retirement, all integrated.
Okay, but
I
let's
don't
not
like
crucify
this.
Pat for
I'm
that.
not crucifying Pat. Pat's
No, let me just ask you this. Were it any other retirement other than California's, because the public retirements now have probably swung too far. You know, nobody argues that. I don't think.
But people do.
But I'm asking if there was a person sitting in this seat that had a military retirement that was same as mine,
Yeah, would you
a
bitch?
brigadier general or something.
You
would
guys are missing the point.
No.
The
what
point
is
is
the
not
point?
whether Pat is entitled to retirement with the state. He is
No,
more
what's
than
the point in
the
a
point of the
nutshell?
matter, in a nutshell, is he only needs to serve 2 or 3 years as the sheriff to max out the county retirement.
And?
Also,
No, that's not true.
okay. So if you
That's-
put in
that's not
12
true.
years, what? It's 10 years. But how many years have you been here already?
I've been here 6, but at the end of one term as a sheriff, I would retire with 3% for every year county year service, which
Right.
would be 33% or something.
Well, why is it that Larry and them, they get X amount? They're tier 1 employees and they get all that.
They're elected. You're right. Pat will get another benefit with this election.
Well,
You know,
if
you-
but
it's
it
not as
won't be a
lucrative-
max out.
Okay,
No, it
as
won't.
long as it's not as long as it's not a max out and the calculate, I'm fine with it.
Okay, maybe we can ask Pat a different way. What is your personal opinion, aside from the sheriff? We know that the previous sheriff, $200,000 a year in retirement, $100 an hour sitting at home in retirement.
But he had $163,000.
We look at the
in pay.
system, and I know I'm asking you not a sheriff's question, but more of a, now putting
Right.
yourself in the budget analyst.
Right.
How do we afford this? How do we keep going on?
I don't think we can afford
And this is, I think, where Robert's frustration.
No,
a lot
no,
of
I
people.
agree.
But you
got.
know what?
And they pick on you, but it's not you. It's
It's
the
not you,
system.
it's
I
the
know,
system,
I
but
know,
Pat has
I know.
the answer.
I just
See,
represent
But
what's
see, I
going
like
on.
Pat's answer.
So what do you do?
Pat's answer is we can't do it. What I get tired at is people say, well, that's just the way it is.
Okay,
'Cause they
no,
don't wanna
I
answer.
think he answered it completely.
I think that particularly the public safety side of pensions have swung too far. And I think when you're retiring at 100 and X amount,
Right.
I think the system can't sustain it. And so I think we're going back. And I think there's several tiers now, and I think it's swung, and I think we're going back in the right direction where it's reducing those.
And that's what we have to do. And this is what got to your
And
statement
that's what we have to do.
40
right.
minutes ago about dealing with the unions.
Right.
Well, that's
Because everybody thinks since 9/11 they're a hero, and I don't disagree that public safety employees are very important to our society.
But they're the
we've held
highest
them-
paid.
Well, we have. We've given them all of the perks when we had all the money.
Was Highway Patrol
3% a
number
year
one?
as opposed to everybody else's 2.5%.
But you have to understand that it wasn't the officers, it was the politicians that
Right.
did
And the
that.
unions.
The officers didn't have anything to do
Okay,
with it.
so here's a
And they
question.
went along with it. And why wouldn't you?
Well, here's a question for Pat.
And that's
maybe.
why when people start
Right,
vilifying Pat, well, he's going to get a nice retirement. Well, why the hell not?
No,
you
no, and
you
that-
put so many years in the saddle. If the economy was booming right now and the public sector, private sector was booming, you wouldn't pick on
But
people
that's
like
not the
Pat.
point. The point of the matter is politicians lie. I got an email that the state of California is way in the red,
Right.
even though they've said they're in the black. And every time we sniff black,
I understand.
Okay, so what I was concerned about, and Pat answered it. He said, "No, I'm not going to max out." And,
No.
and you are retired.
And he's pragmatic. He knows he only has so much money.
My problem is he's going to have to go argue with unions and negotiate, and the unions are going to bend us over a barrel again.
Well, the unions will probably point that out to Pat. Hey, you're getting a nice fat retirement. What about us? You're going to throw us under the bus?
The sheriff doesn't negotiate with the union.
Who does it? The city?
Well, it's the
County?
The county.
The bargaining union.
Yeah.
But where you will be instrumental is at the county level, lobbying for your department, right?
Right.
Because
Good.
there's 5 entities basically that the county funds. Am I correct? The HSA, the sheriff's department,
Well, there's
and several others.
There's a lot.
Yeah, there's several pots
So there's
of money.
department heads that go to the county and ask for portions of the money that is
And the
allocated
board
for
of
the
supervisors.
They don't set the salaries. Wages, hours, and working conditions are bargained for.
Right.
That's under statute.
But you're looking for more resources in order to
what
retain.
I do is present a case to the Board of
Right.
Supervisors for an adequate public safety budget.
That's right.
And so that's what I advocate
And-
for.
and in short-
Although, when we first started talking, I told you recruitment and retention is going to be an issue.
course it is.
And short of revenue increases, that money's going to have to be taken from somewhere if it's going to be given to you, correct?
It's short of revenue, of course it is. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a logical statement.
Right.
And like Larry has said, until we get the crime under control, until we have people feeling safe,
Right.
you're not going to have.
But
revenue.
they might have to reallocate some funds to the sheriff's department, public safety,
Yeah, but
and
it's-
take it out of the
But
HSA or something.
The problem that I have, and this is not a Pat situation, then the problem that I have is I never have any of the police or the sheriff say, "Hey, let's go for coffee." They all stay within themselves. This is not a Pat thing. This is just me, what I see out there. Why you
Maybe-
give me that look,
maybe-
Jack?
No,
Because,
I'm trying to. No, we
maybe
got 2 minutes left.
Maybe
We
it's your
have 1
charming
minute left.
personality.
What?
Maybe you don't get asked to coffee because
No,
it's your charming
my point
personality.
is that it's a joke on YouTube. I'm a hero. I deserve. We had on a Randall Roadshow. The number one biggest draw in retirements is public safety. Okay, police department, sheriff department, fire department. Oh yeah, because what
Mr. Lunney's acknowledged that. I think
Yeah,
You know,
right.
it's
No,
unsustainable.
No, I'm not saying
He's got a
it's to
tough
him.
job ahead of him. And the nice thing about this interview is hopefully it'll continue after this date because my personal opinion is Pat will either win outright tonight or he will be in a runoff with Vern Warren.
Yeah, we'll have him back.
And I'm going to go out on a limb and say that when this airs, we should have some results. It'll be almost 10 o'clock. And that's my personal opinion, Pat. And I think you've done a great job in this campaign. And
So he has your vote?
No, we don't. No, we're not endorsing. I'm just telling you. I'm just telling you what my feeling is in this race, and then I want to invite Pat back onto Citizen Watch to talk more about these issues.
I'd like
as
to
they
do
come
the
out.
interview next time.
Yeah, that's fine because I tried to bring up a lot of the questions you had, and just going
didn't you
out.
let
I know
me
we're
do it?
out of time. It doesn't need to give out any contact information because we'll have you on again.
Call
the
the
election's
DA's office.
basically over, but. Is there any differences you want to point out between yourself and whoever goes in the runoff, if there's a runoff?
Well,
Got better hair.
I think you pointed some of them out in the show. The differences are clear. My experience is substantially at a level that's not the field.
Not to say you don't have field experience.
No, not to
though.
say I don't have experience, and I understand that the product we put in the field is our most important product.
Right.
So I understand that, and I want those deputies out there to be the best they can. But in order to do that, I think we have to have somebody that has the experience and we can't afford to make any mistakes going forward. if we're going to be as good as we can be, we can't afford to make mistakes. We can't afford to waste money. We can't afford to go in a direction that doesn't work. And so I
That's a good point.
think I've had the experience that I can that I know which programs work and which programs don't work, and I just think that that's the difference between the candidates at this point.
Well, we're out of time. We appreciate you having coming in, Pat.
You in a hurry?
Well,
He's ready to run.
Well, no, we've taken
Got
up his
nothing
time.
to do.
Again, folks, tune into Thursday's show. We'll give a recap of the election.
And programming note, tomorrow night on Randall's show, we'll do kind of a recap of the election results.
Yeah, we're going to do Randall's show tomorrow night.
And Thursday night on Citizen Watch.
So Wednesday you can hear us.
You can hear
Robert.
Casey.
Oh, no, you hear
Casey was going to interview.
Okay. All right, guys. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.